not coffee with Karan.
Why? That's what I've always
Only
wanted.
because we don't have coffee. That's it.
We don't have coffee. We're not allowed.
I'm Nico Daswani. I'm the head of arts and culture. Delighted to have these two wonderful artists with us. We thought with both Sharmeen and Karan in Davos, wouldn't it be great to have them come together, talk a little bit together, uncensored and unmoderated. I'm going to remove myself. This is just the two of you. Talk about their upbringing, talk about their lives as artists in the subcontinent, talk about their influence and the work that they do not only in their country but across South Asia and of course across the world. I'm going to disappear now.
When?
And I'm gonna. Actually, I'm right here. I'm gonna be right here.
Oh, is this?
In the last
how we're
few minutes of the session, depending on the flow, they might open it up for the two for you for questions. We have 30 minutes, and with that, please join me in welcoming Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy and Karan Johar.
Sharmeen, call it an occupational hazard, but when I sit across somebody like this, I just feel like I'm conducting an interview, and there's nothing that I can do about that. So, I know it's meant to be a freewheeling conversation between two people, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen with me sitting here, because I feel compelled to just do this interview myself.
I've always wanted to do coffee with Karan, so I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, but this is a hamper-free conversation, I just want to tell you. Firstly, I have to tell everybody Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is one of the most fantastic documentary short filmmakers, actually. Why should we slot a filmmaker into any category? Her two Academy Award-winning films are meant to be outstanding, and I can't wait to see them. I remember your acceptance speech, Sharmeen, and I remember feeling really, really, really proud as a filmmaker that your film traveled the way it did, the point and perspective it made. And I think more than anything else, I think the result of what happened with the result of you, and that's what every creative artist actually aspires for, is an impact because of his or her work. And I have to say congratulations as a filmmaker. Thank you for actually accepting to do this with me. I feel very honored.
Same here, and I want to do a very personal introduction to you because I grew up watching your films, and
thank you.
And
I have to say this to you. I did Wikipedia her age because I just felt like, that I was feeling a bit young at Davos for the last one day till I realized that I am not only going through a midlife crisis, but I'm also 44 years old. And Sharmeen is a good 6 years younger than me. So her saying that she grew up on my film would be an accurate statement. Thank you, Sharmeen.
No, I mean, the thing is that your films made me realize what love was. And that's a very powerful thing for women in our part of the world, especially. I've felt that you told stories that allowed us to dream. And whether it was about love or whether you talked about religion or sexual orientation, all of the things that we all felt and wanted, you were telling us on the big screen. And in Pakistan, when I was growing up, there was no film industry to speak of that was our own. So Bollywood was our film industry. Right. So thank you for all of those memories that you have given all of us that are sitting here today.
I know, thank you. That's amazing because, I mean, what do I say? I have to say that my early influences, like, we were speaking of like what we should talk about, and I felt like ever since I was 4 years old, I was like a trapped Hindi film heroine who needed a release. Like I felt like all I ever grew up on was songs and dances, and our cinema is so known for that aspect. So I felt like that maybe this would not be my calling because it was so much a part of my passion, but I was always advised as a child that this would not be a great industry to get into because my father incurred so many losses. So all I did was keep my passion extremely internal. I would dance to these songs every day. I would watch a Hindi film every single day, sometimes 4 and 5 times.
Did you love Dafli Wale?
Yes, yes.
Dance to Dafli
many
Wale?
times. And my father, for some strange reason, thought that it was a thing he should be proud of. There was a song in a Hindi film which required me to do, it was a duet song between Rishi Kapoor, a prolific actor from India, and Jaya Prada, an actress from down south who had gained momentum in India. But for some reason, I would just do her parts in the dance. And my father would actually think it was a great thing to showcase. Till my mother once sat him aside and she said, every time guests come, you can't ask your son to start dancing on this song. You know, people normally at that day, and I was always unusual in that respect, because when I went to my first school interview and they asked me what I wanted to do, I said I want to style hair. And when I walked outside, my mother said, why can't you say what other boys say, that you want to be a pilot? because that was the aspiration of a 4-year-old, the common popular aspiration. But I was always like a little like unusual. And I'm sure that if I had to ask you about your early influences.
I was very unusual.
Yeah.
Firstly, I'm the eldest of 6 children,
Right.
5 of them girls. So my father was on the elusive chase for a son for a very long time.
Right.
I was a pain in the ass since I was 10 years old. I was asking difficult questions all the time. And, my mother was very busy raising so many children, and she didn't want to answer many of the questions that I had. And so she encouraged me to write for newspapers when I was very, very young, when I was 14. By the time I was 17, I was already pretty much doing what I'm doing now, which is pissing a lot of people off. My very first kind of brush with that was when I did this article, which I went undercover. The article came out on the morning of Eid, my father had woken up and gone to say his prayers, and he came shortly back, and he said that, "What the hell have you gone and done today?" My father was this tall, imposing man. Imagine he had 5 daughters to worry about. Right. So a South Asian father with 5 daughters, you can imagine the anger pitches that keep going up and down. And I wondered what I had gone and done that day, and clearly the people I had written about had wanted to teach me a lesson and had spray painted my name and my family's name with profanities across our gate, our house, and within the larger neighborhood we lived in. But just like your father encouraged you in his own way to kind of follow your dream, my father did too, and he told me it was okay to tell the truth, and that somebody would always be standing around me if I chose that path.
My father was wonderful. He was wonderful, but he didn't tell me the truth. He was completely deluded about me. He thought I was gorgeous. He thought that I should be a main lead in the movies, and that I had puppy fat, and that once I lost it, I would be a complete hero material. Now, we all know what a Hindi film hero is all about, and I was a far cry from that. But it was like, that's when you know that some Punjabi fathers, that's where I come from, and from the part of the world that he comes from, they come with love and they come with deep amounts of delusion.
But you tried your hand at acting. And
I did, and the film was a disaster, but I perhaps wasn't. That was not the reason why I won't act. It's just, I realized at a very young age, when I used to stare at myself, that I knew that I was meant for other things, but acting in a mainstream Indian film was definitely not on my bucket list of 100 things to do, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to pull it off. I didn't have the personality, I didn't have the prototype to be a lead actor. Cinema was always my obsession, like I'm sure it's been yours. Ever since I can remember, it's what like motivated me. I feel like there was a point of time where I felt like even my life was a film. The way I dealt with my friendships or my relationships were always mildly theatrical.
So how did you go from being a costume designer? Because I know you were very interested in that, right?
So that was my calling, actually.
Okay.
I thought that's what I thought I would do. I remember the very first day I was on an assistant on a film called Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. And I was told that, you're an assistant, and I had given myself that 1 year that if I don't prove myself in this domain, then I'll do something else. Like my mother said, do business, something as generic as that. Because she believed like the movies just didn't make money, and my father had incurred heavy losses. And she says, I'm Sindhi, and how can you not learn that part of, money acumen from me? Because you're as useless as your father is, you just don't know anything about how to kind of raise money or make it. So I said, okay, I'll give myself that 1 year. So when I was on set on day 1, I thought I was coming in everyone's way. And it was that point that the director of the film gave me the department to handle, which was the costume department, where I thought, and I was told to go and open up a peti, which is like a box, and remove like a costume from an older film and give Shah Rukh Khan a sweater to wear because he has one close-up to give. And that to me was the most defining piece of work I'd ever done up to that point, is find like an old sweater for Shah Rukh Khan to wear. And at that point I realized that this is going to be my calling, I'm going to be a fashion designer. But it was on that set, I think, that I realized that my passion was beyond just garments and clothes. That could be a hobby perhaps in life. But eventually I realized that I was so swept by the narrative structure of a film, by the idea that a filmmaker is really God. You create a world, you can destroy it, you can do what you want with it, and you can serve it to the people just the way you like.
Okay, so I think a filmmaker is a pregnant woman.
Okay.
Because, okay, so you carry this thing in you.
Yeah.
It's in you, and nobody else knows about it. You kind of hold it close to you, and you groom it, and then you put it out into the world, and you hope that the world will embrace it just like the way you've embraced your own kid.
Well, that's true. Actually, in a sense, you're right. God is, I think, the execution, pregnant woman being the process. I think, and I feel like, and so what happens, Sharmeen, when your labor literally is met with so much like perspective, including criticism. Like I know for a fact that in your country, with the tremendous work you may have done, there's always been a backlash that, you perhaps are painting your country in not the best of light. How do you react to that level of criticism when it comes your way?
So initially, very early on in my career, maybe 10, 15 years ago, when I would face criticism, it would make me upset. And I'd wonder why, because I wasn't the one doing the atrocity. I wasn't the one committing the atrocity. I was the one who was showcasing it so that it would stop. I was doing something that I believed in, that was close to my heart. And then, over the years, I began to realize that people speak out because they know you have a voice, and they know that you have an impact. And so they want to drown out your voice. And that's why, I hate indifference like you do.
Right.
And I'd rather have people either love me or hate me.
But not be indifferent,
and not be indifferent. And so in Pakistan, either people love me or they hate me. And the ones that get angry about what I do and what are mostly really misdirecting the anger, because the anger really should be about the issues. Who wants to have acid violence or honor killings, or who wants to have violence against women in general? No religion, no culture condones it.
Right.
And so, now it doesn't matter at all to me anymore. That criticism doesn't faze me, because I know my work is having an impact. And more so than anything, most mornings I wake up and I read things about myself on social media, and I laugh. Because there are things about my life that I'm learning on social media that I had no idea were my own.
But there is a divide that lies. There's the Wikipedia and there's a Sikipedia. And the Sikipedia is all about the things that don't exist in your life, but there's this people. When you talk about criticism, I completely, I feel connected. I feel like you're my soulmate in that respect, because I feel like when I wake up to that Twitter trolling or that abuse, it's like we discussed in the interview we did this morning. Initially, it was anger that moved then, to complete indifference, and now it's amusement. Like now, if I'm not criticized in the morning or trolled and abused to death, I feel like, it's something's missing in the day. I'm reacting very strangely to praise now. It's like I'm awkward around like compliments, because I'm not used to reading them. Because they're like faceless people who say the nastiest things. And like eventually, they may think whatever about your life or your cinema or your sexuality. But that is not, sometimes you just read like, you give an opinion and there'll be a response to that will be gay.
Yeah.
And like, how is that a response?
What about bitch?
Or shut up, or shut up, homo. And I'm like, whether you think I'm a homosexual or not, or whether you have a commentary on my orientation, is a separate issue altogether. I said something about a film. Comment on that film, agree or disagree with me. What do you mean, shut up, homo? I mean, and like, or good morning, gay, beep, beep, beep. Like, I mean, that's not the alarm you want in the morning, but that's the kind of reading you do. And then there are the nastiest things that are hurled at you. And then, you feel like you have to build an armor of steel, because we are in the business where we make movies, we're opinion makers as a result of being filmmakers. And I can't say that I've done anything path-breaking in the first half of my career. I was only wanting to make money for my company and entertain the audience and make mainstream cinema. The result, maybe there were emotional graphs that were touched upon. But where I made a film, for the first time I felt like I was doing something was when I directed My Name is Khan, or even before that when I did Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna, where there was so much criticism on the fact that I touched upon infidelity. And everyone told me, you're endorsing infidelity. And I said, how could you endorse something that's already sold out? Like, at the end of the day, it's infidelity, for crying out loud. It's more popular than marriage, and all I'm doing is talking about it. And so leading actors cheating on their wives in mainstream cinema was apparently complete harakiri. I remember, and I will share this one moment with you, where Shah Rukh checks into the room with Rani Mukherjee, where they know that they're going to eventually end up having sex. And I was watching it at a paid preview, first paid preview of the film. And there was a very stern gentleman with his wife who'd come to see a Karan Johar film, expecting it's all about loving your parents. And suddenly Shah Rukh checks into this hotel room with Rani, and his wife gave a surprised look to him, and he said, "Don't worry, dream sequence hai." That means and then 5 minutes later, when they realized it was not a dream sequence, that they were going to commit infidelity, the two of them gave each other a dirty look, looked back at the screen and walked off. And I realized that, that if I'm going to have a commentary on something like infidelity, then, and it's going to create this kind of a storm in my coffee cup, then I don't know what I should do. But post that now, as I said, I've tried everything. But what amazes me, Sharmeen, is the way your approach is and your demeanor, considering that, you have to go back home and combat much more than I do, because you've been much braver than I have.
No, I think my greatest asset, to be honest, is that I'm a woman. I mean, many women that come from our part of the world think that it's a disadvantage. I've always thought that being a woman is my greatest asset. I mean, I really can get away with doing a lot of things in Pakistan, getting into places and getting out because I'm a woman.
But you don't play that card, do you?
Of course I play the woman
you
card.
do?
Hell yes!
I wanted to hear that.
I mean, you're a South Asian woman. You've got to
Of
play
course.
the woman card. There's a long line of men
Drag.
standing. Stand
That's-
to the front of the line.
that-
How can I stand if there's 100 people standing in line? No. When you can play the woman card,
You will.
you play the woman card, the damsel in distress. I mean, don't I look like a damsel in distress?
Darling, I want to tell you, I look much more like a damsel in distress than you do. I want to tell you, if there was a competition in that department, drama queen, damsel in distress, you ain't winning.
I think it's...
But I think it's amazingly honest that you said that, because I think it's fantastic when, look, I'm all about women empowerment and liberation, and I know there's a lot changing even in our cinema. We're trying to make that point, and I believe it, I endorse it. I genuinely have faith and belief in the power of women. So I don't want to sound like, but there's no way that I can ever sound sexist, because that's not my core belief. But still, the fact that you say that sometimes that you use that card is immensely interesting for me to hear, because very few women admit to that.
Well, the thing is that you've got to play all sides. If I need to stand up and face a man and look at him in the eyes and scare him off a little bit, I do scare Pakistani men off a little bit. That I do, and I enjoy that power.
You like being intimidated?
I enjoy that power that I can scare him, and he kind of takes a back step and then looks away. And then if I need to be a woman and be the damsel in distress, then I will be the woman and be the damsel in distress, because we live in countries where you can do both. And I like that. I like the fact that somebody else is going to stand in line and let me cut in and say, please. I like that. Why not?
Yeah, why not? I mean, why should chivalry be collateral damage?
Exactly.
Yeah, why should it be?
Exactly.
No, I think that all you have to do to scare a man is to really have an opinion. It doesn't
Women
take very
with
much.
opinions.
It takes very little. That's all the ammunition that you can actually have, is you actually have an opinion.
Yes. But, I'll say this, that in my experience, after a little while, even if somebody doesn't agree with my worldview or doesn't agree with what I'm fighting for, in many arguments that I've had about my work, and I've had men especially nod their heads, shake their heads at the end of a conversation and say, maybe, and then walk off.
Right.
So it's not that we live in a world where we can't impact the way people think. I mean, we both live in countries where sometimes saying the truth is hard. And you've had your fair share of issues very recently. And we know how much you love Fawad Khan.
Right.
And how, so, I think that we have to, as artists, need to kind of now say, we need to do things that are true to our heart. And do the things that we want to do. So I really hope that one day I can go on the big screen and watch Fawad Khan be directed by you again.
No, I feel like I'm trying to process how to answer that question.
Quickly.
So
You see how I brought it in?
Where you crept it in.
Yes.
Where you crept it in. Thank you for that. Thank you. You didn't play the woman card. You just play the journalist card right now. I want to tell you, which doesn't have any kind of gender bias, I'm sure. No, well, what do I say? You know what I went through. I mean, it was a tough time for me. It was a tough time for the film. It was a tough time for like me as a filmmaker and as a human being. I mean, I don't think that I would repeat that experience ever. I have a great regard for talent, and I have a great regard for Fawad Khan's talent, which is why he's been in 2 of our films. The circumstance, we don't know where we're heading, really, and we don't know. And I think all great actors should find the best platforms. And so just like you, I hope and wish that Fawad finds the best platforms because he's, according to me, a terrific actor. Having said that, I don't ever want to go through what I went through again. Neither the situation, the circumstance, or the apology. None of that is something that made me feel comfortable. I felt weak, I felt vulnerable, I felt victimized, I felt all those things, and I feel as a filmmaker, I didn't want to feel any of the above. All I wanted to feel was creatively liberated. And that's all I want to really say, is tell my story without, but then I realized that there are 2 parts of me, just like I am with my astrology sign. I'm a Gemini, you get 2 for the price of 1. There's also 2 for me in the real world. There's a producer and there's a filmmaker. I'm accountable to my studio, I'm accountable to the very many people who've invested in me and to the company that I run on a daily basis. Similarly, I'm accountable to me as a human being and the artist within me. So I always feel conflicted, and I don't like that conflict. I hate it. I hate that when I write a scene, I'm worried about internal censoring. I'm worried about like the outer approach to how people will react to my film. I'm worried that whether when I release my film, I'll be allowed to release in my own country or not. I don't want to have these fears. And I feel like your creative liberation comes from the fact that your work is so accepted internationally, and that is so amazing. Whereas my level of impact has been purely national. It's not that I can tell you that barring the strong diaspora that I love and adore and who have given me everything, my work has not been international. You know, God knows I've made my Academy Award speech, but I haven't been able to make it.
I've heard what your closing line is going to be.
This one's for you, India.
Yes!
I've made it. I have a line before that. I said, since I'm physically inequipped to fight for my country on the battlefield, this is the best I can do. This one's for you, India. It's the speech that I've made, not because the Academy Award is the be-all and end-all of anyone's existence. I believe because it's got global viewership. It's an Academy is the award that honors, I think, a product, a film, a piece of work that has been viewed globally. And I think that is the aspiration for any filmmaker. So, I mean, again, going back to you, congratulations for having made that global impact.
Well, first let me just say that it's heartbreaking sometimes to not be able to do what one wants to do creatively just because there is a boundary between 2 countries. But having said that, I hope and pray for a better tomorrow for both of us and the cinemas that we represent and the world that we come from. Because we are certainly the people who'd want to forge forward with a connection versus...
Because I think when liberal minds think, that's what they would come up with. That's exactly what their ideology would be, is to go beyond boundaries. And art should kind of cross all of that. There should be no kind of like either censorship or boundaries when it comes to any piece of art.
And do you want to open this up? Should we?
Yeah.
All right.
Hi.
Hi. I think thank you so much for the great conversation. But one thing I want to ask was, you talked about women empowerment, and Karan talked about liberating women and helping. But the narrative that is there, that the film industry in India has objectified women over the years again and again and again and again. Even they have songs that, you keep teasing someone and that person is going to give in to you. And that has built a society. Now, society reflects women films, and films reflect society. It's a way of it. And there's no sense of urgency even in the Bollywood industry to actually, do you go back and say that, we did this, we got to fix this? How do you start and where do you start from?
You don't have to say that realization that you talk about where it comes to the objectification of women, came to me. I'm not that I'm justifying it, because I apologize for all the, I think, songs that have objectified women, and I feel very strongly about it today. But when something is an organic part of your DNA, you don't realize that actually you're changing the mental fabric of the country by the little things that we show on cinema. The fact that we think it's romance, but it's actually Eve teasing, and that we think it's love and passion, but actually it's stalking. You don't realize that these are the things. It's always the man chasing the woman, and who's finally relentlessly. Now there's nakhra, which we think is ada, which is what we think is nakhra and ada, but actually it could amount to something else as a result of it. And there is for example, I've had a song in one of my films called Chikni Chameli. Would I do that again? No. I apologize for it, because I feel like it has definitely changed the fabric of the way the country absorbs what you're doing. And I feel like there are movies that we have to account for, and we as filmmakers and leaders of opinion making, I think have to start doing that. So your point is exceptionally valid, sir, and I think that what can I do but apologize for the work I've done and apologize on behalf of my industry that it was never the intent. It was what I grew up on. It was what we call was chhed chhad.
Yeah.
It's very simply put, it was like the heroine's natak and the hero's passion.
Yeah.
But the interpretation of that was definitely not what we wanted. It was never the intent. So you must know that the intent was never that. But the unfortunate result is a travesty.
Well, the realization is the first step to making sure that...
An acknowledgement.
An acknowledgement.
Yeah, and I think so, yes. So I'm sorry.
That's a good answer.
Hi, I'm Anusha. I'm a global shaper from the Lahore Hub, and I just wanted comments from both of you regarding, whatever is happening at the political front. Why does it always have to end up in banning films at both ends? Like, why do I have to suffer as a consumer?
She's a woman, she'd like to answer.
Look,
Bolo, bolo.
It's very interesting because they don't ban trade. They don't ban. I mean, the easiest thing to ban is films. I mean, look, there are very many people on both sides of the border that obviously don't want the ban to happen. And by the way, in Pakistan, it is a self-imposed ban. There is no government ban on Indian films. They've just decided to be patriotic. But that ban hopefully will ease itself in the coming weeks. And I think that most of us need to make a noise that art, film, and music need to be kept aside. And I hope that more artists will, and that more generations will not have to endure this self-inflicted hate that we have.
Ditto. In inverted commas. Yes, sir.
So I'm from the Indian subcontinent as well. It's wonderful listening to you. Hi, I'm from the Indian subcontinent as well, so it's a pleasure listening to the two of you. If you were given the opportunity to make a film that said partition was a mistake, would you?
Jeez. See, I didn't ask the most difficult question today.
Well, nothing in history can be called a mistake. I think you can't. It
That's
was
a
a
cop-out.
result. It was, well, no, it's not a cop-out because I believe that, there were so many circumstances that lead to what happens. So it's very easy for us to get academic and all historian about it today. It's opinions everyone has, perspectives everybody has. If you ask me about what happened and transpired that time, I have an opinion based on what I've read as not only as a student or as somebody who has a point of view and a perspective. But we weren't there at that time. We weren't those decision makers. We weren't helming those decisions, and we don't know what forced us. And first of all, we don't even know if we have all the accurate facts even today.
Would you make the film?
Sorry?
Would you make the film?
Would I make the film? No, I won't make any film about that topic at all. I want to tell you, and I want to say it out loud, I said that I was trying to be strong. I never said I was retardedly brave. I mean, there is just that. I want to make, I'll make love stories. I'll make all those problems that you go through in the traumas of love, romance, and even dysfunctionality of family. But treading on those territories, like when I see, even in Hollywood, when I see they keep going back to the World War and they'll go back and back and back, and then how many stories are they going to tell, eventually? And I feel that it is a large part of our history, and we have to be proud of our history in general because we have one. We're fortunate. Many countries don't even have that.
Look, we're celebrating this. We're celebrating this year the 70th year of partition for the Indian subcontinent. I think that as this generation, the ode would be to have a stronger bloc, to have less borders, to have a fluidity and exchange. We can't go back and change history, but we can change the future, and we must change the future. And I would love to work on projects that show a collaboration, show that all of us, at the end of the day, are essentially the same people, and a boundary doesn't make you the other or the enemy. So I think that most of our grandparents sitting here or parents made a lot of sacrifices to get either homeland, and that it is now our duty to ensure that our children live in more peaceful times.
Right. And also, I think importantly, telling stories about today, maybe true stories of hope and aspiration and strength and power and positivity, which is what we are doing in our cinema today as well, I think would make more sense than actually revisiting what has already transpired.
Absolutely. All right, we have one last question. Some burning thing for Karan. Come on. Who's going to ask Karan to dance?
No. Thank you. I'm trying to maintain whatever dignity is left.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask. Can we see one of your dances from your childhood that
Darling, those were memories that will live with me. I've done enough of that on reality shows, which is why we were talking about an interview, how that sometimes I'm just not taken seriously as a filmmaker because I dance on reality shows. And they're like, if he can do this, how can we take what he's saying seriously when it comes to content in cinema? But I just want to say that the only thing that I've ever done is be myself. I've never tried to hide behind just being a filmmaker and be serious just because I'm expected to. Just because I'm a filmmaker doesn't mean I should walk looking completely like the world's worries are on my head and I need to kind of change the way the world thinks. No, I want to have fun. I love show business. I love everything about it. I love the arc lights. I love the red carpets. I love walking it. I love being it. I love the importance. I love being famous. I love it all. And with that, you've been a wonderful audience. Thank you, Sharmeen.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
And I have so much catching up to do, watching all your brilliant work. And it's been an absolute honor having this conversation
Same
with you
here.
and spending the first half of our day in Davos together.
Absolutely.
Sharmeen, Karan, Nico had to leave, so I'm going to close this. This was wonderfully entertaining, yet just so thoughtful. Thank you both for being here, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.